Let's make this cute purse with our embroidery machine, all in the hoop. So I just opened my hoop studio, February 2025, and it is this Violet's Everyday cute little purse. It has a pocket and a strap and all of the items in the packet. So I've gone through and I've got the instructions, which again are great instructions by Kimberbell. It does come with some purple fabric and a purple zipper. I'm not really a huge purple fan. I haven't decided if I'm going to use this fabric and maybe just change the zipper to something else, or if I'm going to just use a completely different fabric. I'm going to think about that. It has the strap, and this little piece of elastic is for closing this little pocket. And it does come with the hardware kit, but I noticed that mine is missing the button. So of course it has a button to close it, and so I've emailed them and we'll see what they say, if I can get one sent to me. Otherwise I'll just have to find kind of a bigger button to use. But it comes with all of the hardware for attaching, you know, the D-rings to the purse, and then attaching these lobster clasps to the strap, which again they do include. And then there's the batting, and then the other material for the lining, and the rest of the bag is this really pretty denim. So let's get started on the Violet's Everyday bag. So I have decided on this cute cactus fabric instead of the purple that came with the kit. I'll save that in my stash. And then I pulled out a pink zipper. So for the zipper pull, I have a little cactus earring that I'm just going to put some jump rings on and make that the little pull on the zipper. I have cut all of my lining, the other fabric, and the printed fabric to size. And this piece that becomes this front pocket is the only piece that is lined with fusible interfacing. So I have that ready to go. Now there's a few more things that I need to prep before we can get started sewing. So let's get that finished. Also, I did want to note that I emailed the Me Time Delivered website and let them know that I was missing my button from my little packet, and they are sending me one right out. So I'm not sure when I will get that, but they are sending it to me. Let's get this started. So there are a few things that we need to press and get ready before we start sewing. Again, this is my front pocket. I have backed it with fusible interfacing, and this needs to get pressed in half, and this folded edge will be the left of that little pocket on the front. Then the denim looking material needs to be pressed in half. These will be the little tabs that hold the D-rings. And so I need to press that in half and then fold each end into that center. And then refold it in half. And that just encases all of those raw edges. And then with this one, I will go sew down each long end to top stitch that. Now the two lining pieces that we need to press, and each of these along one edge needs to be folded in a half of an inch. So I have just my little seam gauge, and I will just press it. And then the same thing on this, just a 1/2 of an inch down. I'll go get this top stitch and we can get started on the bag. So I've top stitched that just close to the edge, and now I'm going to fold this in half and cut it in half so that I have 2 pieces for the little D-rings. All right, let's get going. So I do have my designs on a USB, and I, as always, have the USB plugged into this little pigtail cord. This cord is attached to my machine on the right hand side, and I never take that cord out. And that way, when I use different USBs or keep adding designs for one large project, I just remove the USB from the cord, and I don't have a lot of wear on the port in my machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Embroidery, and I am going to set my hoop size. I'm going to do the 6 by 10. Select OK. And then I will come to my USB. And the first thing that we need to do is stitch out the back. And the back is the second design. This is the little flap for the pocket. This is the back, and then this one you can tell that there is a zipper and the top and the bottom. So that would be once we get all of these other pieces done, but we need to do these 2 pieces first. So we're going to start with the back. I will select that design and hit set. And also, I do have my entire roll of stabilizer still attached. It's coming off the front of my hoop, and that just helps me save on stabilizer. And so I am going to move my design up. I'm going to hit Embroidery, and then I'm going to go to Layout and Move, and then just bump it all the way up to the top. And it won't let me go outside because I have my hoop selected and I'm ready to embroider. And that just saves, you know, room on this. And because I have this attached, I will just cut wherever this ends up, and just helps me save on stabilizer. That's something, of course, that's completely optional. I've just always done that from the time I started embroidering. So I will select OK, and then we can start by stitching the layout for the batting. The only thing I didn't cut out per the directions was the batting. Normally when I do Kimberbell projects, I cut the batting exactly to size, but this time I am just going to follow the directions. Besides not cutting this to a larger size, I just have the whole piece of batting, and I will just lay it and make sure that I completely cover these lines so it will tack down, and then I will trim it. Now I will just trim the batting right next to that tack down line. So the next step is the placement for the fabric, and that is just a 1/4 of an inch outside of the batting. And so I will skip that. So I will just use my down arrow and go to the tack down of the fabric. So all I need to do right now is place my fabric over the batting. So now I'm finished embroidering, so I will select OK, and I will hit home, ask me if I want to cancel, OK, and I am going to go back to embroidery and to my USB. I'm going to bring in this little curved flap that goes on the pocket, and we're going to do the same, pretty much the same thing. So I will set, and I did change to a 5x7. I had one little piece of stabilizer left, and this is just a small piece. So I need to come up to settings and change to my 5x7, select OK. And I don't have any excess to save, and so I'm just going to leave it right in the center. It's not going to save me any to, move it up or sideways or anything. So then I will select embroidery, and then I like to go to the minus plus just in case I need to skip or go back or something, my thread breaks and I need to go back a few stitches. And then I'm ready to stitch this out. So we'll do the same steps with a couple of extras added on. So I needed to change my bobbin, and this is why I like being on this screen, because now I'm just going to go back about 5 stitches. Because it's in the middle of a design, it doesn't do a locking stitch, and so I just like to go back a few so it kind of locks in and goes over where I had to cut the thread. So let's continue. So now that the quilting is finished, there's a few more steps on this little flap. I have put a lighter color thread. It is going to mark a placement line for our little elastic that will go over the button. And I am glad I put something lighter than, instead of using the same blue color, just so that I can make sure that I get that right. Now the directions say that we need to pinch this little band and make a loop, but there is a end where this has been sealed together, and that needs to be out towards this outside edge, because that's going to be inside when we turn it. So here's the outside. I'm going to pinch it, and I'm going to place that over this little mark that it just did. And I don't have my button, so I'm hoping that it should be fine. So I have it over this mark, and I have that little end out towards the right hand side. And then it's going to stitch this down. I am going to change back to my blue thread. Now that that is stitched in place, I'm going to take the remaining little piece of fabric and put it right over the top. And this is going to be the back when we turn this. So these are finished, and I'm going to take these out of the hoop. And the first thing I'm going to do is trim this little flap. And I am only going to trim around, right now, are those 3 sides that just finished stitching. I'm not going to cut yet this opening. And so I'll trim a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. But make sure that you don't just cut through and cut this off. They want this to stay in, so that gives it extra strength, and we don't cut this off and those might work their, work its way loose. So once you come up to that center, just peel back that top layer and cut it by itself. And then do the same thing for the bottom. You can cut the bottom, which is actually the top, and the stabilizer. And then you can finish trimming them together. And just cut straight out. Again, on this side, we are not cutting this edge. So now, because we don't really know where this ends, so now we can flip this over and you can use this stitching that was on our original. And the reason you don't want to just try to do it from here to here is you don't really have a line and you might cut too far in, and so they want you to turn it over. And on this, we are going to cut, I'm going to cut just to the outside of that line, not 1/4 of an inch. You can cut directly on the line. I'm just going to cut so that that stays intact, but pretty much you just use that line, that stitching, as your guide. So you can see on this side, it's actually a little bit higher than where we ended that stitching, and that's why they didn't want you to cut from the front side. You would have cut too close. So now that we have that, I might give a couple, just a little cuts just to help ease that corner when we turn it. Of course, don't cut the stitching. And then this can be just flipped out. You can use a tool and just kind of run it along the seam to make sure everything is pressed out. And then I will give that a press. So there is that cute little front flap. And then for the back of the bag, again, you can see I have my roll of stabilizer still attached. That's, again, totally optional and not something that you have to do. I like to do that because you can see where my hoop ended. And of course, I did move this up to save, but if my stabilizer would have been cut down to here, whether I centered this or not, that's, 6 inches I would have wasted. Again, in the scheme of things, maybe not that big of a deal. And so now we just need to cut the stabilizer just even with the fabric. We're not trimming the fabric right now, so just cut it even, and that's mostly just to get rid of this excess, so when we go to apply this to the back, it'll just not be in our way. So just cut it even with the fabric. Again, we're not cutting the actual fabric this time, at least yet. Okay. Now that we've got these 2 pieces done, we can get going on the main part of the bag. So I finished embroidering. I'm going to go home, go back to embroidery and to my USB, and I will get the final design, hit set. And I do need to change my hoop size since I used my 5x7 for that little flap, so I'll go back to my settings. and change it to my 6x10. Select embroidery, and I am going to move it up and hit the minus plus needle. Now I will do all the same steps. I will do the placement for the batting, place the batting and do the tack down, and then trim the batting. So after doing the tack down and trimming of the batting, and then the two little lines right here are for the zipper, but it just goes into that open spot. And the zipper needs to be face up with the zipper pull on top. This is how my hoop goes in my machine. So this is the bottom, and the zipper pull needs to be towards the bottom. And my zipper was a little bit longer than theirs, but as long as the zipper pull is hanging outside of this area as well as the metal on the other side, then it doesn't need to be measured or anything. It just needs to be hanging off both edges. They want it taped in 3 spots. And in the directions, it says to tape exactly like they show. Now, normally I don't tape across the zipper where it's going to stitch, but they have one taped like that. So I'm going to follow the directions and we'll just rip the tape off after. So I will tape the top and the bottom, and then one in the center. So I've removed the tape, and now the hoop needs to be flipped over, and we need to cut the stabilizer out from the edge along the zipper so that there's no stabilizer where the zipper is. Here is a close-up of the back of the zipper with the stabilizer removed. Now it's important to remember not to trim this stitching. That's the innermost stitching when you're trimming the stabilizer. This is what's holding the zipper on, and if you are to cut this stitching, then your zipper will fall out. So just make sure to cut to the inside of those 2 stitching lines. Now the next step is to place the fabric that goes above the zipper. And if you have directional fabric, you need to make sure to put it on correctly. So I have it the way I want it to be stitched. And then I just will flip that down and line up that edge with the top of the zipper. And I am going to tape. And now the next stitch is to just do a tack down line to tack that down in place. I have flipped this fabric up and kind of finger pressed. You could take it to an iron and then put a little bit of tape, and now we're going to do the tack down and then the quilting. So now it's time to add the front and the pocket. So here is my pocket. My piece that was folded in half. This is the fold, and this little tick mark is where we need to line this fold up. Again, my fabric is directional, so I want it to lay in this direction, and then so I will flip it up and align that edge with the edge of the zipper. Also lining up this fold with this tick mark. And I'm going to put a piece of tape to hold that down. Now I need to take that denim fabric for the front, and that is going to also be lined up with the bottom of the zipper. And just make sure that it's about the same overhang on each side. And I'm going to tape just to hold that in place. And I'm going to put a little bit right to the edge. And now it'll do a tack down and tack all of those down to the zipper. So I've removed the tape, and now I want to flip down just the blue fabric. I'm still going to leave this pocket taped up, and I'm going to kind of finger press it just so it lays. And then it's going to do a tack down to tack this down and then do the quilting. Now it's time to flip the pocket down. I'm going to kind of give it a press with my fingers. Again, you could iron it. And this does need to be taped. It should be taped to help hold it down. So here's the little pocket. So now I need to flip this to the back side. So here is the bottom of the pouch, and I need to take this lining piece that we folded the 1/2 inch under, and I need to line that fold up with the zipper teeth, not right where the opening is because the teeth extend a little beyond. So I'm just going to put it just down from that center, making sure that it's about even on each side. And because this is the bottom of the hoop, we need to tape all 4 corners to make sure that nothing gets flipped when we turn our hoop over. So now let's tack that down. So now I've removed the tape from the back, and I am putting the little above zipper piece that we folded under the 1/2 inch. And so that fold again goes by the zipper. And we will flip this over and we will tack down that top piece, or the lining piece for the top. Now the next thing it's going to do is stitch some registration marks so that we can line up the back piece that we quilted, and it needs a visible color. I went ahead and just put red in so that I will be able to see those. So here are the little marks for the corner. There's 4. And then I also, in that same red, went ahead and did the marks for the little tab placement. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to put the little D-rings with the tabs on the top. So now the next step is to place the little D-rings. So I have threaded those through and just folded in half. I've already have one taped, and the directions say that we need to, of course, place the tab over centered in this mark, and the fold, which is where the D-ring is, needs to be 3/4 of an inch down, and that lines up right with the edge of this fabric. So I will line up so that this is centered over that, and then I will pull this up until my fold is lined up with this fabric that's right next to the zipper. And then we do need to tape in 2 places. So that it can stitch that down. The next thing we need to do is attach our little flap. So there's 2 places that we need to line up. The bottom edge of the flap needs to be 1/4 of an inch past this stitching line. So I went ahead and just marked, because of course my fabric, wasn't put on exactly straight, and so I didn't want to go by the fabric. So I've just marked 1/4 of an inch underneath this stitching line that I will line that up. And then the other important part is the top of this flap needs to be 1/8 of an inch down from this stitching right here. So I've kind of marked it so I know how far down to put this. So if I line up the bottom with those marks, and I'm lining the top edge so that it is 1/8 of an inch from this stitching. And then I'm going to tape it in place. And of course the quilting needs to be up. So the most important thing here is that this stitching is done correctly and you have this in place. And what this stitching did is it went down the edge, and then it made a little tick mark, and I may have been wise to make a change in thread. I can see it when I was stitching that this little tick mark went up right here. And the directions say that if that tick mark is on this flap, you need to remove that stitching, take it out, and readjust and do it again. The little tick mark, again, can't be on this flap. Otherwise, it's going to sew the flap and it's not going to work correctly. So I know you can't really see it because it's the same color, but it's right here. And so I know that it did not stitch on the flap, so I'm okay. So I can move on to the next step. So now it's time to put the back piece that we quilted earlier and finish the bag. So it needs to be on a flat surface. I'm just on my wool mat, and I need to open the zipper. It needs to be opened just so that when we turn the bag, we can get it open. I'm going to open it about 3/4 of the way. These little D-rings need to be taped so that they don't accidentally flip up when we're sewing. So zipper open, that's super important, or you won't be able to finish your bag. You won't be able to get into it. So now it says to use thumbtacks, which I don't have any thumbtacks, so I'm just going to use pins. It says to flip it to the back side and to put the thumbtack or the pin directly in the corner of those little corner marks that we made. And that's why I did red, so that I could see it. You just want a color that you can see. and to put them in the very corners. Oops. Take this tape off. And of course, if you had thumbtacks, it would be much easier because when you flip this over, you could lay this hoop flat down. I'm going to go ahead and lay it down. I'm going to pull my pins up, but it would be a little bit better. But if you can see, the pin, you can see this one, the pin is coming out of the very corner of these little marks. So now I need to take that quilted back that we did in the first step, flip it quilted side down, right side down, and now I need to align the pins up with the corner of all of the corner of the quilting. And so I'm just going to look when I pin it in, and then I'm going to kind of tug to make sure it's, you know, coming straight up. And so I'm just going to double check before as I tape that my pin is going through the corner. So those two look good. And again, it would be easier. My pins have, you know, they're not flat. So it definitely would be easier if you had thumbtacks. You could put it flat down, tape the thumbtack, you know, to the bottom, which is what they tell you to do. So that looks good. So I'm going to tape this one. And then I'm just going to kind of make sure that I'm flat down. Then I am going to take these pins out. And then I think I'm even going to tape a little bit on the corners. Okay. We'll see how we did. So then the last step is to just tack this down for the top, and then we have just one more step. So I have my hoop in my machine, and I do have the speed set to the very lowest. This is super thick now, and so I want to go slow. So let's stitch this out and see how we did. So I've removed all the tape, and now we need to flip the hoop over one more time. And our last step for embroidering is to put the lining and cover the entire backing. Just make sure it covers up all of those stitching lines. Again, this is really thick, so I am of course going to tape it because we need to flip this back to the right side. And the last step will go around, leaving a gap so that we can turn it. I'm keeping my machine, of course, on the slowest setting. So here's what the back looks like. The final step, it leaves this opening to turn. So I've removed all the tape, and we can take this out of the hoop. And I'm just going to trim the stabilizer roll off. So now we need to trim a little bit over 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I am going to use some non-sewing scissors to cut over the zipper. So I'll just trim those off. And then I'll do this side. And then I'll use my sharper scissors, and I will just trim. And I think I'm going to look from this back side since it's less. This has a lot of stitching and you might get confused on what to cut. So I think I'm going to flip this over, and we can see that what we need to cut. Now I am not going to cut quite so close on this opening, so I'm just going to kind of angle out, and I'm just going to cut even with my fabric for right now. And here is, I think, where these little tabs are. I think I'm going to use my other scissors. You could just do a couple layers at a time and not through everything. That's a lot of fabric. So for this opening, I am leaving this piece long, and I am going to trim off the rest of all of this that I don't need. I don't need all of that as long. I only need the lining, and my lining piece I should have left a little bit longer. When I placed the back of the fabric, I probably should have looked ahead and put more towards this. Luckily that's the inside. So I think right now I'm actually going to keep one of these longer just in case when I turn it I need it. But all of this extra, I am going to just trim some of that off because I don't need all of that. So now once we have it trimmed, we can flip it around and it'll be to the lining side. So once we have it turned to the lining side, it's good to poke out, even though we're going to flip this again, it's always good to go ahead and poke out the corners. Then it makes it easier flipping it the other way. And so before we flip it out, this opening needs to be shut. And here's what I'm talking about. I, again, should have placed the fabric a little bit longer along this edge because it's going to be turned in, and you can hand stitch or use some type of tape. I'm going to give mine a little press since I think I'm going to go ahead and cut. I left these long in case I needed to kind of use that when shutting this. I think I'm going to go ahead and trim those. Again, this is the bottom of the bag on the inside, but I think I am going to trim a little bit of those. And then where that stitching is, I'm just going to do my best to fold that in. Again, that's a lot of layers, and so it would have been great if that would have been a little bit longer, like this piece. But you know, sometimes the first time you do something, you learn, so the next time you do it, you can change things up a little bit. That might help. And so then with this, you can just whip stitch that. I think I'm going to go ahead and, since mine is so small here, I'm going to go ahead and hand sew, which I normally don't do. And of course, there's a way that you can make it so that that stitching doesn't show. You can go, you know, under this fold and have that so it's invisible. I'm just going to whip stitch it. I don't care if I can see those. This is the bottom of the bag, and I just need to get this closed. So I'm going to go ahead and just whip stitch it, not worrying about trying to hide that stitching. So I just whip stitched it. Again, I am not concerned that you can see it. This is just for me. And if I would have left that other piece of lining closer or longer, I would have used the tape, the permanent tape that you put in. But it just needs to be sealed up however you want to do that. So now we can turn it right side out. You can press it if you want the lining to, you know, look nice and crisp. So now it's just simply turning the bag out one more time. So cute. I love the fabric that I ended up doing. So definitely want to press it. Kind of get everything to settle down. Don't press that elastic. So cute. I think I am going to take my, you can press quickly over the zipper. It's not metal, so don't press too long. When I press over zippers, I like to go ahead and put some type of a pressing cloth just to protect it a little bit more. And this flap folds over, and this will attach to the button. Again, I'm waiting for the button. Look how cute that is. And then you can slide a phone or, you know, whatever you want into this little pocket. So now, since I don't have the button right now yet, let's work on the strap. Oh, I did want to show, so when you open, of course, your lining, and see how this down here where I slip stitched or where I whip stitched it closed, you can't even really see it, I don't think. I think any way you can get that inside lining closed is fine. Okay, let's go work on the strap. So the first thing we need to do with the strap is to cut a 17-inch piece from the strap. So I will measure and cut right here. And this, they are in the directions is considered the short strap. So on this short strap, first thing we need to do is take one of the lobster clasps, and there is a smooth side. It's textured, but it's smoother than the other side. They are having the smooth side be the right side. However, if you like the more textured side, you could use that as the right side. I am going to use the smooth side. So now I need to just thread this with the right side up, down, and bend it towards the back. And they want this from the fold to the end to measure 1.5 inches. And you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but so from that fold to the end, that's about 1.5 inches. And I am going to clip that in place. And then on the other end, we need to put this little buckle. Now this does have a right and a wrong side. The right side, you know, is smooth, and if you flip it over, you can see where this little bar has been bent backwards. So we want the right side up, the right side of the strap, and just weave it in and down. And we want the same about 1.5 inches from the fold to the end. So that's about right. And then I am going to clip this one as well so I can sew them all together. So right now we have a short piece that has the lobster clasp on one end and the little buckle on the other end. Now for the long strap, which is the remaining strap, again with the smooth side or whichever side you want to be the right side, we are going to do the same thing that we did here. We're going to put this down, and from the fold to the end of the strap should be about 1.5 inches. And I'm going to clip that. So now we can go sew. They want us to sew just a little square with an X in all 3 of these ends. Okay, so the straps are done, and I wanted to show you on the first strap, I didn't quite get my thread close. I should have done one more stitch over. I just used a matching thread. In the bobbin, I didn't worry about it, so the bobbin's a little bit lighter, but that, you know, would be good if you did that the same color. So this box would have been great one more stitch over. And I just counted, and I went slow and I counted. So then on this one, I did, I think 6 stitches before, you know, turning, and then 6 and 6. So that one looks really good. And then this one. So now let's put this buckle together. So here is the short strap, and I'm just going to flip it so that the buckle part is towards the top. I'm going to take the long strap with, here's the end. I will just take the smooth side, that's my right side, and I'm just going to bring it up through the top part of the buckle and then down. And then this makes it adjustable. So now this is the long strap, and it lays on top of the short strap. Now the short strap, you can clip it. This, you would come up and around, of course, and the long strap then would clip to the other side. So I'm gonna pull this super long so it's easier to see. So maybe you can see the whole thing. So again, so here's the short strap. Yeah, that would have been good for me to put matching thread in case it twists. Live and learn. So the short strap with the buckle on top, and then this is the long strap. So now this can be, you know, made super long, and if you get it to where you want to wear it, and that's how you're always going to wear it, then you can cut this off. So maybe you have, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 inches, whatever you want, you know, extra. You don't want to cut it super close, one, so that it doesn't pull out, and two, you might want it longer for some reason. But anyways, they give you plenty of strap. So now you just would need to decide, you know, how long you want, and then trim off any of the excess, but leaving, you know, leaving a good amount. All right, so we have the button that I'm waiting for, and now I'm going to add my little earring. I'm going to put some jump rings on this and attach this to the zipper pull. So I was looking for jump rings to add to this little cactus to put on my zipper, and I don't have any of the gold that match this hardware. So I've decided that I'm just going to take this little jump ring and little lobster clasp off. This is a super cute little flower, but I think I still want to use my cactus. So I am just going to take some pliers, some needle nose pliers, and twist this, not spread it open, but twist one forward and one back. And I will just add that to something else. I should have taken this off first. So the same thing, I'm just going to twist this little earring wire off. And then I'll just slide this on. Whoops. Gotta keep everything on. And that matches. This has gold on it. And then I will just twist these back together. And now I have this cute little cactus that I can put on the zipper. All right, now once I get my button in the mail, this purse is done. But look how cute. I tucked this in just so that you can see, but look how super cute this little purse is. I love it. So I got my replacement button from Kimberbell, or the Me Time Delivered website. They sent me a new little packet that had the button. I'm so excited to get this done. I am going to use embroidery floss, and I'm using DMC 436. Seems to match super well with the button. So I am just going to fold my flap over and just kind of see where it looks like it would fit. And I think about right here in this area. And so I have, I think, 4 strands, and I am just going to go up and put the button on. And then go back down. I think I'm going to do it one or two more times, and then I'm going to tie a square knot in the back. If I were to do this again, which I think I'm going to because I have another hardware kit, I am going to put the button on the flap or the pocket before I sew it, because this isn't sewn. You know, there's nothing anywhere once this is put down that it's stitched, and I think it would be a little bit easier to secure that. But let's get this finished. Our purse is done. I have the button sewn on. It looks great. This is a great addition. The cute little pocket. The elastic just slips over the button. Got the cute little zipper pull charm, and just a cute little purse. I love it.